With the coming of the railways, Victorians found themselves able to travel greater distances for excursions, such as a day at the coast, or, in time and with greater accessibility, a means to commute from suburbia to the city. And, with more time at their disposal, not interrupted by what must have been the incessant jolts and shuffling of passengers on journeys made previously by stagecoach on cobbled streets and rough roads, there was, perhaps, more time to admire the passing countryside, read a newspaper, or cast your eye upon your fellow travellers. For a carriage offered a view of a microcosm of life to the casual observer, and not just in conversations overheard, from body language to fashion, food and drink. If you were wont to take in your surroundings, you could learn about people you might never have imagined had you simply passed them in the street. Today, in a time when a journey by the magic bronze horse was still a modern marvel to some, you will hear an account by Charles Bennett, an artist and social observer, of his excursion from London to Dover by train in the 1860s. You will discover who you might have found sitting next to you had you made the same journey. Gentlemen and women, commoners and conmen, travellers that wouldn't stop talking or telling jokes, and others enjoying meat and drinking from beer bottles. Perhaps you will find that some of the travellers aren't all that different to passengers of today. Take your seats for a journey into the past. Before we move on, if you're interested in history like this, and you want to find out more about what life was really like for people in the past, please consider subscribing for more content. If you'd like to support what we make for you, check out the description for links to ways you can help us continue bringing the past alive. Our views seem to grow wider as we grow older, our desires less simple, and we wonder how we could ever have been happy while so cabined, cribbed, and confined. We laugh at the humble pleasures of our grandfathers and are ready to welcome any toy that is startling and new. We throw ourselves into the arms of competing railway companies because they can give us excitement, novelty, and change. As the rocking horse is to the infant, as the pony or the flying swing is to the youth, so is the excursion train to the man. He enters it for a few pence, and swifter than the genie bore Aladdin from city to city, he is carried from town to country, or from country to town. Clerk, shopman, servant, costermonger, or sweep can cling to the long tail of the fiery steed, and ride roughshod over the laws of time and space. What kings have sighed for, what poets have dreamed of, what martyrs may have been burnt for predicting the coming of, is now as common as blackberries and threepenny ale. The magic bronze horse is now snorting at every man's door. He is a fine animal, if only properly managed, and may be driven by a child, but woe upon you if you let him break the reins. He has battered down stone walls, hurled hundreds over precipices, devoured thousands of stagecoaches, stagecoachmen, Thames watermen, whistling waggoners, country carriers, and Gravesend hoys. A hoy was a sailing vessel or barge. This is one side of the account. On the other side he has joined mother to son, husband to wife, brother to sister, friend to friend. He has cheapened food and tire and clothing for rich and poor. He has made many a deathbed happy and many a wedding party glad. He has improved Richard Turpin and all his followers off the face of the earth, and has even taught the sloucher that there is a cheaper way of travelling than going on the tramp. We are now all fond of excursion trains, more or less. At first we regarded them with aversion. We then approached them timidly. We were lifted onto them by friends and teachers. We trotted them out slowly, holding our breath, and by degrees we saw that we could keep our seat, and yet glide past mountains, hedges, and trees. We then applied the spur, and were shot through dark tunnels onto the seashore, in a whirlwind of thunder and white steam. Familiarity breeds contempt. We learned to despise short distances and 20 miles an hour. We asked for more. Our tastes grew artificial, as our palate was destroyed by highly seasoned food. We deserted our old pleasures and our old friends. Our withered tea gardens on the borders of the city beckoned to us in vain, and looked at us reproachfully as we hurried past on our mad steed. Our old taverns pined for our presence. Our fishing punts on the London rivers rotted with neglect. The backwoods of Hornsey were no longer haunted by our footsteps, and the slopes of Hampstead became a desert. We pushed forward, farther and farther still, into the bowels of the earth. Like the wild huntsman in the German ballad, we glared upon passers-by, and straightway they became infected with the same restless activity. The whole town was inspired to move. Barbers, potboys, and milkmen disappeared for a few hours and came back with strange stories of mountains, lakes, and caverns. Our boys were no longer content to read of inland wonders. They saved up their stray money and went to the Devil's Hole and the dropping well of Knaresborough. Children taunted each other in the street with the distances they had travelled, sitting upon the laps of their mothers as if in a dream. Surly cathedral cities were hustled by Cockney crowds, and Stonehenge was turned into a cool summer house for Bethnal Green parties. All this, and more, has been done within the last 20 years, and in an age which is too wise to believe in miracles. Let us peep inside one of these excursion trains, going to Dover and back for half a crown, and take a few portraits of the travellers as they sit in a row. The magic bronze horse has slackened his speed, and the long tail of carriages is dragging along at the rate of a mile an hour. The young commercial traveller in the corner soon grows weary of a few minutes' delay, even though it may save him from a damaging collision, for he has been born in an age of high-pressure speed, and has fed upon express trains almost from his cradle. He has been spending the Sunday in town amongst his friends, and is now going to join his samples by a cheap Monday's excursion train. His gaping has a sympathetic effect upon the female a little further up at the same side, and they both yawn in unison. The second traveller, nursing his hat with a painful expression of face, has fixed his eyes on an advertising placard stuck on the roof of the carriage. This placard gives a picture of a man suffering from violent tic de la rue, and tells the passengers where they may apply for an infallible remedy. This mode of advertising is dismal, but effective, and as the traveller gives an unconscious imitation of the picture with his agonized face, he inwardly resolves to become a customer for the remedy. The next passenger, with the bald head and the drawn-down cheeks, is one of those deceptive men whom you meet with in every society. He looks like a banker, a manager of an insurance company, or a lecturer upon political economy. You suppose him to be a perfect cyclopedia of exact information, a man who has no end of statistics in his shiny head, and you assume that his taciturnity is the result of deep thought on some of the great problems of existence. You will be surprised to learn that he lives upon the severity of his appearance, and is nothing more than a head waiter at a seaside tavern. The sour-looking old gentleman, twiddling his thumbs at the farther end of the carriage, whose broad hat nearly shuts out our view of the drifting shower, has no business in a train of pleasure. He has joined the company at a side station on the road, and is going to get out at another side station to dun some poor tenants for hack rent, to demand money. This may be a very necessary thing to do, but a holiday train is hardly the proper vehicle to help him to do it. The pace changes, and the magic bronze horse is tearing along at a rate of a mile a minute. The old gentleman in another carriage leans on his umbrella, and blinks as he feels his cheeks buffeted by the fresh air, laden as it is with a scent of new hay. The young woman next to him, who is running down on a flying visit to her mother, nurses her plump boy and tells him to look out for Grandma over the hills. The cheerful passenger at her side draws his face into 100 wrinkles as he watches the trees, stations, and churches whirling past the window. The fat gentleman laughs and shakes like a jelly as he proves the speed by his substantial watch, and the gentleman in the corner settles down into a self-satisfied smirk, as he feels that he is getting the fullest value for his half-crown ticket. In another carriage we are amused by an agreeable man. He knows the name of every station we pass, how far it is from London, and what it is famous for. He has travelled a good deal on railways, and is full of anecdotes. He advises some of the passengers where to go for a comfortable dinner when they get to Dover, and tells them all the points worth seeing in that ancient town. He pulls up the window to oblige the ladies, and is particular in asking how high he shall fix it. He carries a number of travelling appliances with him, some of the most ingenious kind, and is never without a pocket corkscrew. He even carries a shoehorn enclosed in a leather case, a folding cap in a pouch, and a few sweet lozenges to please the children. He is always ready to listen to a story or to make a joke, and to take advantage of anything he may meet with on the journey. "Everybody's sauce," we may hear him say, as he draws attention to a well-known advertising placard. "I never heard of such impudence. We may stand some people's sauce, people we have respect for, but I don't think we can stand everybody's sauce. What do you say, sir?" This last remark is purposely addressed to a disagreeable man, who sits with his good-humoured wife opposite, and who has been sulking ever since the train started. The disagreeable man is not happy in his mind. He objects to excursion trains, and yet he uses them. He cannot imagine why so many people go to Dover. He cannot see anything in Dover himself, but chalk and soldiers. Certainly nothing to run after at such a pace. He thinks every town much finer than the one he is going to, every day much pleasanter than the one he is travelling on, and every carriage much more comfortable than the one he is sitting in. He cannot think that hard benches are half so snug as the old stage coaches, or that being shut up in a close, varnished compartment is equal to riding on the box seat. His round-faced, pleasant wife tries to persuade him that everything is for the best, but he is not open to conviction. Poor fellow! He merits some little compassion as he sits in an excursion train, for he is a broken-down proprietor of a stage-coach run off the road by a branch line of railway. As we draw near our journey's end, we peep into another carriage, and find there a most obtrusive traveller. We can give him no better title than the Cheap Swell. A swell was a rich and fashionable person who displayed their wealth in a pompous manner. Because he is a Frankenstein raised by the cheap tailor, he looks like a living advertisement for popular dress and jewellery, for coloured shirts with Greek names, for the latest style of cheap coat and the latest extravagance in cheap trousers. He is like a picture taken out of a certain handbook of East End fashion, and usually labelled, in this style, 42 and 6. He smokes a bad, rank, cheap cigar in preference to an honest pipe, and smokes it regardless of ladies or fellow passengers. He lives for appearance, for external show, for seeming what he is not, and comes to the country chiefly to astonish villagers with his town manners. He firmly believes that he will marry an heiress of unbounded wealth, who will dote upon his turned-up nose and tobacco-scented hair. Under this impression, he will show himself on the parade when he gets to Dover, with his hooked stick in his teeth, and his shoes fresh polished by a boy at the station. He leans out of the carriage window as soon as the train arrives within sight of the sea, as if the prospect was intended for him and no other passenger. Facing this cheap swell are two females, one young and the other middle-aged, who may be distinguished by the title of the two bottles. They are mother and daughter, but while the old lady is stout, flushed, vulgar, and not above carrying the meat and beer bottle, the youngest wears tight kid gloves, an Eugenie hair front, and refreshes herself now and then with a sniff of eau de cologne. The old lady has given her daughter a showy education with a view of making her a better woman than her mother, and has only produced a piece of affected gentility almost as repulsive as the cheap swell, who thinks herself too good for her company. These are only a few of the commonplace passengers, amiable and unamiable, grateful and ungrateful, who ride on the magic bronze horse day after day, and are so crammed with wonders that they think nothing of it. They hear wild stories of railway accidents, of sleepy pointsmen holding Archimedean levers, who have power to hurl thousands into the arms of death. Like the soldier, however, who strides fearlessly into the battle, they are sustained by a belief that no harm will befall them. The commonest traveller, like the commonest fighting hero, believes that he possesses a charmed life, without any scientific appreciation of the law of averages, any knowledge drawn from broad statistics, that the risk of railway travelling is so small as to be hardly worth thinking about. He trusts himself, his wife and children, on the fiery steed, and sleeps soundly while it cuts through the whirlwind and defies the storm. He rides by many ruins of the past, and sometimes over many ruins of the present. The road he is on, with its trim stations and its straight iron rails, may not be very picturesque, nor very suggestive of decay, but yet it is often as worm-eaten as the most crumbling abbey. It may have been built by sanguine capitalists, and may put on an appearance of thriving business, but a keen-eyed observer may often detect how sapless it is, and see its withered shareholders standing at the gate. The excursion train, however, has small pity for these rich beggars, and passes them with disdain. It turns its back upon those who have given it the breath of life, and obeys only one law, the law of competition. It has often been accused of crunching unfortunate travellers, but its food more often consists of railway shareholders. When it once breaks loose from wholesome guidance, it devours the most promising dividends, tears up houses and lands, and turns its pathway into a howling wilderness.